Hey everyone, Nick Belezzo, Hopeless Guitar Enthusiast here again, and today I have with me weighing in at 8.4 pounds, a 2019 Gibson Explorer in antique natural finish. As always with my demos, I want to dig a bit deeper. I want to go underneath the hood and show you the construction of the model, the specifications, even the neck profile and dimensions, as well as giving plenty of playing examples so you get a good tonal representation of this guitar. So my goal is, if you're seriously interested in a Gibson Explorer and your local music store might not have one, or you're in an area where it's difficult to get your hands on a Gibson, I want to give an accurate representation of how this guitar plays, sounds, and feels. So the basic setup is just like any other Gibson. You've got your 24 3/4 scale length, 2 humbuckers, 3-way toggle, mahogany body and neck with a rosewood fingerboard, 2 pneumatic bridge and stop bar tailpiece. Now beyond that, that's where things get a little different. First of all, you have 3 controls instead of the normal 4, 2 for the individual volume, neck, and bridge, and then a master tone control. Also, you have this distinctive drooping or hockey stick type headstock with 6 tuners on one side. But most distinctive of all is this large pointed body.
Ow, pointy!
It still amazes me that this guitar first came out 60 years ago, and I still feel that it's a radical design to this day. So if you've never owned or even played an Explorer before, what's it like? One of the first things you notice, it's a pretty big guitar. It takes up a lot of real estate beyond your physical body. Well, for most guitar players. In fact, if you look at the outer dimensions of the Explorer, you notice that it's much larger than most other guitars. Taking actual measurements of the bottom lower bout to the upper horn, it's a whopping 27.5 inches. The overall width of the body is 18 inches, wider than your average acoustic or hollow body guitar, and the total length from head to toe is 43 inches, which is almost as long as a jazz bass. One of the first things I noticed when sitting with the guitar in the playing position is how remarkably well balanced it is. The neck doesn't dive and the body doesn't feel like a boat anchor. I always thought that a guitar with this out of a shape wouldn't sit right, but it feels very, very natural. What I really like about how it sits is it kind of puts the whole neck out to the left of you, and you have the entire fingerboard surface completely accessible to play, and there's no awkward positions like you would have up on a Les Paul neck, and so it makes it really comfortable to play in any position. Standing with the guitar on a strap, it remains balanced. There's no neck diving like an SG might. And I should mention at this point that on a lot of the Gibson USA models, they're using these oversized satin finish strap buttons that really hold the strap nice. There's one on the There's one here on the back that's in a really nice position. And so even without putting strap locks on it, I feel secure and the guitar is not going to drop. What I really love about this guitar is they're kind of going back to the look of the original Explorers. I'm a vintage guitar nerd, so I like my guitars to have vintage specifications, even if it might mean sacrificing some nicer hardware. But this guitar gives the vintage vibe, but with some modern improvements. One of the big improvements on this guitar is this pneumatic bridge. I've seen so many different variations of the pneumatic, and whenever I pick up a Gibson, it's really a mystery to me what version of that bridge I'm going to see. On this particular one, it's a really nice design. They have the post with the thumb wheel molded into one piece. The bottom is threaded, which goes into an anchor into the body, which is much more sturdy. This allows for easy adjustment even under string tension. But at the same time, it feels really solid, and I don't feel I'm going to bump it or accidentally change the height of my action. Also, there's a small Allen head at the top of the post for even easier adjustment. If you're not familiar with the original style pneumatic, which is called the ABR-1 or the ABR style, They use a real thin piece of threaded rod that goes right into the wood of the body. The problem with this design is the rod is so thin it tends to bend, and there's a lot of wiggle room, and it's very, very difficult to adjust under string tension. In fact, you need a special bridge jack tool to adjust under string tension. Also, if you have one of the more advanced Tune-o-matic bridge with the Allen lock in the back of the bridge, that will eventually chew up those threads. Now, Gibson refers to this as a Nashville style Tune-o-matic. I've seen several different versions of the Nashville style, ones with big ugly posts, ones with Allen screws here in the back, ones with 2 thumb wheels, even ones where the posts were smaller than the holes in the bridge and there's lots of wiggle room. So kudos to Gibson for improving once again on this design. I really love the adjustability of this particular Tune-o-matic, but it's not a big clunky eyesore. Now the stop bar is pretty basic, but I flipped it over and on the bottom it says advanced plating. So for you purists out there who were complaining about the plating on your stop bars, well, guess what? It's now advanced. For decades, the Explorer in the Gibson USA line has come equipped with ceramic humbuckers. These are the same pickups that were used in the Les Paul Classics for many years, as well as the low end of the solid body line like with the Faded series. However, starting in 2018 and continuing with the 2019 model, they are installing a pair of Alnico humbuckers. This guitar comes installed with a pair of chrome-plated burst buckers, a BB3 or Alnico 3 magnet in the bridge, and a BB2 or Alnico 2 in the neck. Personally, I think this is a really good move on Gibson's part because they're going again with the vintage vibe of the original Explorers, which had PAFs in them. And I think this is an upgrade that a lot of guitarists do. They would prefer to put in Alnicos. So might as well offer them stock. So let's hear how these burst buckers sound. First, I'm going to play clean through a Fender 68 Custom Deluxe Reverb Reissue. I'm going to go through all the pickup positions, and then I'm going to go back over and solo on top of it. Let's hear a different chord progression. This time I'm going to play a new rhythm clean, double tracked, and play some solos on top of that, again clean in the different pickup positions, followed by some more soloing with an OCD Overdrive pedal. I'm using an Archer Icon Klon clone through the custom channel on the 68 Deluxe. As you can tell, this guitar has more of a traditional sound to it. It's a guitar that lends itself more to rock, maybe pop and blues playing. However, since the 80s, the Explorer body style has always been closely associated with metal. I always think that playing style lies within the fingers of the player and not in the actual gear. That being said, could you play metal on this Explorer? Well, sure. Now the burst buckers do sound okay with higher gain, but if this is a particular style of music that you want to use with this guitar, I would probably swap out the pickups with actives or something with a bit higher output. I think this is a big turning point for this instrument because I think the ceramic humbuckers that Gibson have used don't sound as good when played clean, at least in my opinion, and they lend themselves to sound better when used at higher gain, which I think a lot of Explorer players use. So while this is an upgrade, in my opinion, there might be a lot of Explorer players that prefer the sound of the older ceramics. This brings me to the point of construction. So it's interesting that they use the Alnico pickups in the USA line because I really think they're trying to go for that vintage vibe of the original Explorers but at a much lower price point. We've seen quite recently the value of original Explorers just skyrocket. There was an article on Reverb about a dealer in London who supposedly brokered a deal for a 1958 Explorer for $1.1 million. Now there's some speculation if that deal is authentic, but we do know back in 2006 at Skinner Auctions, they auctioned off a parts Explorer that shipped from the factory in 1963 for $611,000. Now, it's obvious to any guitar nut why these original Explorers are so expensive, but we've seen even the reissue Carina Explorers just go crazy. Now, this doesn't mean that they're actually getting these prices, but I'm seeing the asking price of a 1983 Carina Explorer routinely at about 7, 8, or even 10K. And for particular models or limited runs of Carina Explorers, I'm seeing them at $10, $15, sometimes $20,000. So why is this? Well, it could be the relative scarcity of the wood that they use to build these Explorers. Now, they use a wood called limba, or Carina as it's often referred to, and this is a wood that's harvested from tropical West Africa. It comes in two varieties, white limba and black limba. Now, it's the same tree, but black limba is usually the core wood, and it has dark contrasting patterns and figures. Now, the white limba is more of a consistent pale yellowish color. This is the wood that's traditionally used in the original Gibson Explorers and Flying V's. So it's become kind of rare for Gibson to put out a Carina Explorer, or any other Carina instruments for that matter. Now, Carina or limba wood is a bit pricier than your average wood, but it's not scarce. It's not protected under sites or under any other type of protection. The supply line is relatively healthy. Maybe it's just the fact that it's difficult to find enough chunks of white limba. Possibly Gibson is trying to protect their higher end line of guitars. I don't know. That's just speculation. So, the Gibson USA line of Explorers still uses mahogany, just like it has since it reissued the guitar back in the mid-70s. But this one's made of 3 pieces of mahogany. There's a center strip, which houses the humbucker routes and the bridge routes, and then there's 2 extra wings on the side. The neck is made of 1-piece mahogany, but like any other Gibson at the top, it has 2 splices of wood on each end to create the wings of the big drooping headstock shape. Another big change in the new Explorer is the antique natural finish that they're using on this guitar. This guitar has only been offered in solid black, transparent cherry, or solid white. Now, I know there's exceptions and limited runs, but for the most part, the USA line only had a choice of 1, maybe 2 of those 3 colors at any given time. But with this antique natural finish, it's obviously not Carina, but you get more of that original Carina Explorer look, which is what in the 50s they would call a limed or blonde appearance. The finish itself is a high-gloss nitrocellulose lacquer, and I must say they've done a really good job with it. Many of the new Gibsons that I've owned over the years have had, admittedly, really awful finishing flaws. They have problems grain filling properly, there's sloppy masking, blotchy wood, scraping the binding where they run the blade into the actual finish itself. The Gibsons that I've been seeing in the last couple months, the finishing looks really good. I think they might have upped their game, or it's just a coincidence, but there's no dips in the finish. It's flat, it's glossy, it's really well done. And I have seen some other Gibsons where the finishing has been on par. I feel one of the most important parts of a guitar is the neck shape. Now, the neck profile on this is the slim taper, which is probably one of the most widely used neck profiles by Gibson, but Depending on what guitar you pick up, that slim taper feels a bit different. Now I took actual measurements of this guitar and created a profile of the back. Width at the nut is 1.7 inches per spec. Depth in the center of the first fret playing position is 0.83 inches. 7th fret is 0.86 inches. And 12th fret is 0.88 inches deep. You can see it's an evenly rounded profile with not a lot of meat in the sides, and it's pretty consistent taper up towards the neck. Per the Gibson specs, these are cryogenically treated low profile frets. Measuring with my digital calipers, they all are about 41 thousandths tall and 11 thousandths wide. The finishing on the frets are very nice. The tops are even, and the fret ends are all consistent and beveled and smooth. Finish is even smooth all the way up to the playing surface, and even between the frets you'll notice there's a little bit of a round over, and it makes for a really comfortable playing neck. The neck to body joint is at the 19th fret, and with this large cutaway it gives you access all the way up to the 22nd fret of the fretboard, which is great. So that means that everyone gets to enjoy my hot B pentatonic licks. Fretboard radius is your standard 12 inches. Nut material is Tectoid, which is Gibson's branding for a graphite type nut. I assume it's some kind of graphite polycarbonate blend. The tuners are Mini Grovers, and on the back of the model it has an imprint that says Made in USA 2019 model, even though this was made in August of 2018. And also imprinted is Gibson's newer serial number designation, which uses the first 2 digits as the year and not the 1st and 5th like it did in the past. Removing the truss rod channel, I found what was one of the cleanest truss rod cavities I've ever seen on a Gibson. Even new Gibsons usually have like splinters, wood debris, caked up rubbing compound, and it's all plastered over the nut, and you have to clean it all out before you can adjust the acorn nut properly. Even you could see a picture there of the half moon washer that they use on the inside. The acorn nut moves freely and the neck adjusts very easily. Which brings me to the point of adjusting the truss rod on an Explorer. When using my standard hex nut driver, the tuners got in the way of the shaft and I couldn't use the tool. Gibson used to include a small multi-tool with a hex nut driver and a Phillips head screwdriver on the other end. Now they include this awesome multi-tool with the truss rod adjusting hex driver built into it. This is actually an extremely well built and practical multi-tool. Every single size and shape of screw that is on the guitar is covered in this tool, and then some. In addition to the truss rod tool, you have a flat head to adjust the pickup height and pole pieces, 2 different Phillips head drivers, 7 Allen heads, and this odd looking tool which I didn't know what it was at first, but I think it's actually meant to adjust the large slot head post for the stop bar, so it's a pretty useful tool indeed. Now let's take a look at the case. If you've never seen an Explorer case before, well, it's pretty big. The case measures 4 feet by about 19 inches wide. If you put 4 legs on it, you could turn it into a coffee table. One thing I know for sure is you can't fit it sideways into the back of a Subaru Outback. Within the past few years, Gibson has gone back to this brown Tolex style case. They used to use these in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. From about 2005 or so, they were using black Tolex with a white plush interior, but they're going back to this brown Tolex style with yellow piping and pink plush interior. Included with the case is the final inspection checklist, and here you can see that the guitar had a final date of 8/17/18. I actually purchased the guitar on September 21st, 2018, and they actually had it in the store maybe a week or two, so it was a very fresh guitar, not even a month out of the factory. Model designation DSX19ANCH1, and you can see the serial number, and inspected by Scribble, packed by DS. Also included is a picture of the actual guitar on the workbench. You also get this Gibson branded leather strap, which no one will ever use, and this hermetically sealed Gibson branded black pouch. Inside is the multi-tool I showed you earlier, a polishing cloth, the Gibson Gold warranty, and the owner's manual. And you know, after all these years of owning Gibsons, I don't think I've ever read the owner's manual. Until now. Farthest away from the fingerboard, control the tone. The tonal quality of the instrument is darkened by the reduction of treble rather than the addition of bass. The tone control turned all the way counterclockwise results in maximum reduction of treble and produces the darkest sound. Oh, no way! For fun, I took the guitar apart just to see what was going on the inside. Once we get it open, we can see in the pickup cavities there's some markings. There's a model designation in the bridge cavity, and in the neck there is an AN for Antique Natural Finish. Also in the neck pocket we see that the neck tenon is a shorter one, unlike the vintage Explorers which had a long tenon. It also looks like they used a strip of maple to patch the truss rod channel. The channel route for the electronics is pretty big, plenty of room to stuff in modifications, add actives, put a battery in there if you'd like. The holes from the pickup cavities to the channel routes are also very generous. Plenty of room to stuff wires and take them in and out. Here you can see the anchors for the Tune-O-Matic bridge, and stop bars are installed right into the body. Flipping it over, we can see the control cavity is neatly done. It appears there is some blowout when drilling the channel to the output jack, but that's hidden, so no worries there. The output jack plate is made of metal and is nice and sturdy. Looking at the overall pros and cons of this model, the pros are many. I like the overall finish, I like the look, I think it's well built. I love that you have access to the entire playing surface of the fretboard. The fret work is very nice. I like the hardware, the mini Grovers, the Nashville Tune-O-Matic. I like the fact that it comes equipped with the Alnico burst buckers. Also the guitar, it's fairly lightweight. This thing weighs 8.4 pounds, which I think is pretty light considering how bulky of a guitar it is. But for us guitar nerds, I really like the fact that they're going for the overall look of the original Explorers. This gives us a chance to buy something with that vintage look without having to dish out ridiculous Carina custom shop money. Now the cons of this guitar are more the inherent flaws of the design. Now, I still think this guitar shape is really cool, and I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's always been a form over function design. But I really don't like where this toggle switch is. It makes it very difficult while you're playing to come down here and make a switch and then get back into playing position in time. The original headstock, in my opinion, is actually a pretty nice design. I like the fact that you've got 6 tuners on a side. It makes for easy maintenance and restringing, and it's still got the tilt back angle. And this is the flaw on many Gibsons. On the normal Gibson, you have the strings jetting out at all angles when it hits the nut. This can cause tuning problems with added friction. They almost get this right with the Explorer. As you can see, the angles jet out just a little bit. If they had gotten it to where all the strings had a completely straight path, I think it would be perfect. But whenever you have the strings kind of jet out at an angle, it can cause for tuning problems because it gets hung up on the nut. And the nut itself, in my opinion, isn't the greatest. It's that Tectoid graphite poly material. It's my personal opinion that I like bone. So whenever I build a guitar or any guitar that I own, I make a replacement bone nut for it. So the nut is really the only stock part on this guitar that I would change out. Now, I know it's obvious, but look at all these points. You see, all these corners and edges, these are sexually attracted to getting dings. If you're anal retentive about the condition of your instrument, do not buy an Explorer. I swear, I've babied this thing, but this thing is just so awkward. You just can't keep all the coordinates for all the different points on the guitar, and you're constantly just banging it into different... So if you're bringing this to small bar gigs where you're shoved in the corner, or you're playing on top of a dinner table with 4 other guys, which I have done on multiple occasions, this guitar is definitely going to be in either somebody's face or in somebody's way. So if you're going to play this guitar out, it's going to get beat up. I'm just warning you. Now, the Gibson has a price of $16.99 on the guitar. That's their MAP price, or manufacturer's advertised price. So this is really the most expensive we've seen an Explorer in the USA line, besides any special or limited editions. I know I've already said this many times, but if you want to get an Explorer with the sort of vibe of an original Explorer, This gets you close without having to modify the hell out of it or spend big time money. And I should also mention that if you play guitar the incorrect backwards way, Gibson also offers a left-handed version of this model. But if you are a left-handed guitarist, may God have mercy on your soul. So thank you very, very much for watching. Check out the links below. I hope the demo and review has been enjoyable and entertaining. And please let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. Let me know if there's any gear that you want me to review. And in closing, always remember, whoever dies with the most guitars wins.